Let's get right into it. Number 12. Divine permission slips. One morning you just know somehow the cosmos gave you permission to act however you please, so long as you claim a deity approved it. Not symbolism. A way of living. Across centuries, many held firm. When a holy sound, scripture, or bold clergy member declared, "God wants this," everyday logic fell away. Kindness became negotiable. Questioning felt like betrayal. Outcomes? Left for others to handle, ideally beyond death. Something deep inside you trusts power. Big power. Especially when it seems to come from beyond, like a voice with no body behind it. That kind of setup makes reasoning take a back seat. Experts label this shift moral disengagement. The moment your thoughts whisper, "Not me. Something bigger moved my hand." It mirrors how minds obey terrible directions under command. Only here, the one giving orders can see everything and answers to nobody. Takes hold quietly at first. Then every choice seems fine. Fighting isn't just war. It's sacred duty now. Hurting someone turns into cleansing. Whole groups of people. Now they're called needed losses. The strangest thing is the quiet comfort around it all. Not a trace of regret. Peaceful agreement fills the room, even as actions unfold that, anywhere else, would scream horror. It feels ordinary, which is what makes the idea so risky. No one was laughing like villains. Instead, they left work, ate meals with their families, believing things went well. Once you hand right and wrong to some higher power, your inner voice loses its grip, like a supervisor who cannot actually decide anything. Turns out, once you believe the cosmos gave your actions a thumbs up, your mind quietly silences the voice wondering, could we be the villain here? Number 11. Pain builds character. It's familiar, isn't it? A tip passed down perhaps by a mentor. Or a relative. Possibly even someone who endured hardship and assumed repetition makes it wisdom. Pain builds character. That idea has lasted ages. At times, entire generations used it to justify what they couldn't change. Starts with something sweet like pain shaping character. More agony equals better results, so goes the idea. That thinking pushed harsh classrooms, cruel jobs, beatings meant to fix behavior. Little kids hit for following rules. Jails using torment to force regret. Sick folks enduring awful care since suffering supposedly proves healing. The pattern runs deep, hiding behind claims of growth. Oddly enough, your mind really clings to this thought since unused pain unsettles it. When agony carries purpose, somehow it stings less. Because of that gut reaction, societies built habits around it, then made rules. Pain stopped being mere bad luck. Now it earned respect. Anyone who spoke up about hurt, that alone showed they hadn't suffered enough. Here's the truth. Hurt rarely brings wisdom like people claim. Instead, it tends to plant dread, wounds, quiet retreats. Yet when a culture believes suffering leads to growth, harshness slips on motivation's clothes. Hurting hands pretend they guide. Broken routines get called necessary training. Those making the rules? Not villains inside their minds. They saw themselves as guides, as fixers of broken ways. Individuals convinced that harshness was kindness in disguise. Your nerves fray completely. Some label it progress instead. For hundreds of years, time quietly agrees. Number 10. Some people are just less human. Strange how clear it becomes when you decide someone isn't quite like you. Once they seem dumber, somehow broken, or missing pieces inside, then pushing them aside makes sense in your head. It's not about harm anymore. It just looks like common sense. The moment their worth shrinks in your mind, harsh choices feel quietly reasonable. Calm certainty fed this idea, not anger. Whole cultures sorted people as if judging a strange contest. Some called civilized, others savage. Some pure, others stained. Certain ones normal, the rest broken. With labels in place, separating lives, owning bodies, forcing work, ending existences. All of it shifted into quiet talk, like fixing a leak or clearing weeds. Words grew cold. Distance settled in. Paperwork made it routine. It takes less effort to sort people into boxes. Focusing on one person at a time drains resources. Grouping things feels smoother. When shortcuts take over, humanity slips away. Your sense shrinks where respect drops. Brains tune out emotion when someone seems beneath notice. It strikes as odd. Really, how dull such a harsh idea becomes when put into action. Forms to fill out. Rules written down. Graphs on office walls. Fake science dressed up as truth. Measurements of skulls. Tables tracking bloodlines. Each one turns harm into something that seems routine, almost ordinary. Once people call a group naturally inferior, hurting them starts to seem unavoidable, maybe even kind. Saying they're better off this way has covered up more cruelty than pure rage ever did. Once the mind treats a person as lesser, ethics begin to shrink. Number 9. Obedience equals goodness. You stand there waiting when a person in uniform asks you to do something that feels wrong deep inside. Your mind jumps to an excuse. Maybe they know what they are doing. That quick thought is more risky than it sounds. Obeying without question has been dressed up as good behavior for too long. The truth hits hard. Just following orders doesn't make it right. A quiet habit grew around obedience. Questioning felt wrong. Pushing back? Unthinkable. Simply act on command, assuming leaders had weighed every choice ahead of you. Royals, war captains, holy figures, physicians, officials. Anyone with rank turned commands into shortcuts for right and wrong. Your mind leans on leaders without thinking back then. Going against them could cost your life. That old wiring still hums today. When a boss speaks, tension slips away. Someone else now holds the weight. Obedience feels like relief. Mistakes happen, yet none land at your feet. Someone else gave the orders, so blame shifts elsewhere. It was this idea that made regular folks function like parts in terrible systems. Not cruel by nature. Never villains plotting in shadows. Just early arrivals. Task-focused. Took pride in following procedures exactly right. Damage showed up afterward. Often labeled unfortunate incidents. Here's what strikes fear into people. Going along quietly seems calm. Pushing back stirs tension. The mind labels going with the flow as safe, less about truth, more about comfort. That quiet ease tricks you. Sometimes it just steps aside, letting control pass quietly into someone else's hands. Number 8. The ends justify everything. Some folks think like this. Smooth moves count more than clean ones. Getting somewhere great wipes out past messes. If pain fades fast, it somehow fits. When harsh choices open brighter doors, they start feeling required. Your mind craves what comes later. When a reward seems ahead, today's discomfort fades into background noise. This pushes people through hunger when dieting. The same pull drives last-minute efforts before a deadline hits. Twisted versions of this idea let cruelty slide. Just call it necessary. Call it part of the plan. Suddenly, doing wrong feels like waiting for sunrise. Back then, whole groups were punished because of this idea, moved by force, put through harsh training, subjected to relentless trials, all without their consent. Every time, the excuse ran like clockwork. Terrible now, sure, yet somehow worth it for what came next. Here's the issue. That so-called later almost never shows up. Sometimes it appears only after everything's broken beyond fixing. When life gets better, pain doesn't just vanish for those who went through it. By that point, faith has already had its effect. Pain shifts into something that moves forward. Spreadsheets take over where guilt used to sit. Your mind views later rewards much like unused gift cards, happy to collect a surprising load of guilt without cost. When winning is all that counts, humans turn into test models. What's left behind isn't progress, it's wreckage. Number 7. Fear keeps order. Folks often repeat a certain idea, though they might not name it directly. When fear fades, things start to unravel. Without that tension, order slips away. It shows up in how folks act, guided by unease rather than choice. For years, this seemed less like an opinion and more like background noise, just part of being human. Punishments moved into the open, harsh, not about fairness, about spectacle. Killing, pain, shame. They stayed visible since secrecy ruined the effect. Fear made it work. Fear races through your mind before you even notice, way ahead of logic. In that moment, clear thought vanishes, instinct grabs hold instead. This reflex turns fear into a tool. Rules slide by without challenge if safety feels uncertain. Gathering together slows, pushback fades. Obedience grows while silence spreads. What happens is this: fear won't make anyone kind. It just makes them silent. Goodness doesn't grow, wary habits do. When fear runs things, harm grows stronger since fear weakens. That means penalties must intensify. They need more noise, a sharper image. Oddly enough, groups run on fear tend to fall apart easily. Once that fear fades, things start breaking fast. Yet at first it seems steady, quiet, in order, much like a heavy cover sealing in steam from a hot kettle. Fear never calms the storm. Instead, it traps everything inside one. Number 6. Normal people would do the same. Strange how this thought slips in, pretending to make sense. Saying anybody here would act the same makes terrible deeds seem normal. What looks like inevitability hides a decision behind it. When we call an outcome natural, avoiding it feels pointless. Back then, whole cultures brushed off cruelty without a second thought. Pressure made violence seem normal, almost expected. Horrors weren't seen as crimes, merely part of staying practical. Speak up and folks would call you out of touch. Dreamy, clueless about real life. That's how things stood. Something clicks in your mind when others are part of the act. Blame spreads thin across faces, never lands on just one. Guilt softens when passed around like spare change. Each extra person makes the weight lighter somehow. Responsibility fades a little more each time someone else joins. It spreads fast, which is what makes it so risky. When plenty believe damage comes naturally with being human, pushing back feels useless. Who challenges what seems unavoidable? If others act alike, why doubt the setup? Here is the bitter twist: people can show amazing self-control and kindness when things get tough. Yet this side of us rarely becomes a reason people give. Your mind picks the path of least resistance, settling on bad habits just because they cost less in emotional effort than reaching for something healthier. Number 5. Cleanliness equals morality. Once, dirty meant grime on skin. Now it hints at rotten choices. That shift crept in quietly, dressed like respect. People began pointing fingers, calling others tainted souls, not hands. Blame spread easier than truth. Your mind squirms at revulsion. It kicks in before reason, lingers past terror. A sense of grossness shuts down curiosity. Removal becomes the only goal. Over time, groups began linking certain humans with dirt, disease, decay, triggering that gut recoil on purpose. When that link forms, hurting others seems like tidying up. Staying apart begins to feel necessary, almost clean. Hitting back appears protective, not cruel. It stops being about damage, it becomes maintenance. Suddenly, anger doesn't come from judgment. It rises like hunger, automatic, deep. This idea made people think separating, sterilizing, or killing others was okay, all in the name of cleanliness or virtue. Because once disgust takes hold, compassion fades. When your mind sees a person as garbage, tossing them aside feels normal. What strikes fear isn't always loud. Words come before damage, like infestation, cold and sharp, then pollution, heavier each time. You hear contamination enough, feeling fades without notice. Harm arrives late, but numbness? That arrived long ago. When right and wrong begin to reek of cleaning fluid, erasure follows close behind. Number 4. Tradition knows best. Turns out, just because people did a thing forever doesn't mean it made sense. Time passing somehow gets mistaken for approval. The older a habit, the more untouchable it seems. Push back on custom, and reactions come fast, like you kicked an ancestor's ghost. Old ways gain weight simply by lasting. Familiar stuff gets a free pass in your mind. Seems safer, somehow solid, like it belongs. When something sticks around long enough, say a custom link to who you are, it feels like proof it must be useful. Your brain runs with that idea without checking too closely. Long-standing customs have excused harsh rituals, fixed power structures, and deep-rooted mistreatment, just because they lasted. Saying, "This is how things were," shut down questions fast. Harm didn't need naming. Duration acted as shield. Here's why old ways stick around, not because they work, but because someone shields them. Usually those who gain from keeping things unchanged. Damage slips through time disguised as custom. Pain wears the mask of heritage. When something turns into habit, quitting seems wrong, though it causes harm. Worst when those harmed were never heard. Your mind confuses years lived with insight, then labels it admiration. What feels like honor is often just confusion dressed up in gray hair. Number 3. Science says it's fine. Picture yourself committing a terrible act, yet staying calm simply because a graph supports it. This mindset holds strange sway. Across time, people have leaned on science, sometimes genuine, sometimes twisted beyond recognition, to excuse actions. A label of natural from statistics made cruelty seem okay. When tests delivered figures, pain got brushed aside as necessary steps. Proof, they claimed, lived in the results. Quiet acceptance followed the spreadsheet's lead. Science comforts the mind. It seems steady, precise. Quiet numbers never shout. Silent charts never cry. Wrapped in lab terms, damage sits softly. Feelings drift off. Humans turn into test cases. Suffering shifts to data points. Passing turns into outcomes. That idea made room for forced tests, eugenics, even rules shaped by those who saw people as broken machines. What stands out? A lot came from folks convinced they were thinking clearly, moving forward. Not harsh, just following data. Your mind leans on structure, not gut reactions. When an idea wears a lab coat, it seems sharper somehow. Doubting it? That can feel like falling short. Feelings get brushed aside as noise, despite shaky proof dressed up as truth. Morality fades once numbers take over. Empathy struggles to survive scrutiny then. Number 2. It's for their own good. Scary thoughts can wear kind faces. Shielding someone through pain, some call it guidance. Harming in the name of future good? That excuse built prisons out of promises. Brutal schooling, stolen languages, control masked as care, all dressed up like love. Quiet cruelty often speaks softly. Your mind clings to the story since it puts you in the lead role. Not inflicting suffering, just pushing through what feels required. This twist reshapes right and wrong. Suddenly, the one hurt seems spoiled. Pushback? Evidence the damage was justified. Belief like this leans on paternalism, thinking your judgment fits others more than theirs does. When that settles in, permission stops mattering. Resistance gets labeled a sign of trouble. Caring shifts toward control instead. Long ago, groups in charge pushed this idea without facing what it did to others. Those called in need of fixing seldom chose for themselves, while gains, if any showed up, came shaped by the ones calling the shots. What stings most is how it begins with real care. Yet when pain gets excused for what might come later, cruelty finds endless reasons to grow. Your kindness shows up dressed like science, yet skips asking whether the person said yes. Number 1. This is normal. What makes this idea so risky is how invisible it seems. Not an opinion, just how things are. Once anything settles into everyday life, thinking about it fades away. The usual never raises red flags. There's no need to explain what everyone accepts. It simply exists without question. What once seemed normal often hid quiet suffering. Lives bent to fit cruel routines without notice. Adaptation crept in like fog, slow, silent, accepted. Each small compromise added up until pain felt routine. The mind learns to live inside damage if it stretches out long enough. Familiarity masks danger more than ignorance ever could. What begins as a jolt fades with repetition. Shock wears off after the first horror. By the 10th repeat, discomfort lingers less. After 100, it hums quietly beneath daily life. When harshness settles into habit, pushing back seems odd. Normalizing pain makes defiance feel out of place. What people accepted without thinking made space for everything else here. When a thing just is, looking at it too closely seems odd. It gives off unease, sometimes fear. The fact that it's usual ends up being reason enough. What makes it truly unsettling is not the belief in awful ideas, yet how easily those ideas faded into the background. People didn't resist, just blinked past them like dust on a window pane. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.